What do you think will happen to your marriage if God is not a part of it? I want you to take a few seconds to really think about this question. And in case you don't know, I'm going to tell you. If God isn't in your marriage will eventually break. Not because you're bad people, not at all. It's not because you don't love one another. It's because the foundation is cracked, even if you can't see it yet. Yeah, you have the marriage certificate, but something's missing. You have the ring, you have the vows, you even have the photos. But deep down, there's a tension that neither of you can explain, a slow drift, a silent erosion. And the truth, if God isn't truly at the center of your marriage, not just in name, but in practice, it will break, even if you don't see it yet. This video is not about religion. It's about reality, and it's going to show you 5 core truths every man needs to understand before it's too late, because your marriage doesn't fall apart in one moment. It crumbles over time when what should have been the foundation becomes an afterthought. But here's the question. What does it really mean to be a spiritual man? And are you living that out in your marriage or just saying the words? My name is Will Bridges, and out of all the videos I will make on this channel, this will be by far the most important one regarding marriage. So let's talk about what it really means to build a marriage that doesn't just survive, but stays strong, stays steady, and stays sacred. But before we talk about marriage, we need to talk about you, because spiritual leadership doesn't start with controlling the house. It starts with who you are when nobody's watching. There's this idea floating around that being a spiritual leader means being the boss of your house, the shot caller, the alpha male, the one who lays down the law. But real spiritual leadership is not about dominance. It's about dying to your ego every single day. When a man leads spiritually, he leads the way God designed it, not by demanding obedience, but by becoming an example worth following. Leadership in marriage isn't about being first. It's about being faithful and putting your wife's spiritual, her emotional, and her mental well-being ahead of your pride, your preferences, and your comfort. This is why so many marriages break silently, because the husband thinks he's leading, but in reality, he's really just managing. He is organizing tasks, paying bills, solving problems, but he's not laying himself down for his wife. Here is something I've learned over the years. Spiritual leadership begins when your comfort stops being the priority and your wife's peace becomes the mission. A good leader in marriage is like a bridge, not a wall. A bridge carries weight. It gets walked on. It spans gaps. But most importantly, it stays steady even in storms. If your leadership feels like control instead of comfort, it's not spiritual, it's selfishness. But here's the real gut check. Even if you're doing your best, something still breaks if you're doing it without God. And this next point is the one that most men never realize until it's too late. There are some marriages that look perfect from the outside. They pray before meals, they post happy pictures, but behind the curtains, God isn't actually involved. They're not reading his word, not applying his principles, and not truly listening for his guidance. It's easy to go through the motions of faith, but still build your marriage on selfish desires. You lean on your own wisdom, your own logic, your own plans until life hits. The sickness, the betrayal, the financial strain, the spiritual drought, and then suddenly the cracks in the foundation show up. That's when most couples start praying, but they're not praying from a faith. They're praying from panic. Psalm 65:2 calls God the hearer of prayer. But if you're not talking to him, not relying upon him, and not listening to his instruction, how can you expect answers? Prayer should not be a hotline for emergencies. It's a lifestyle of alignment. God should not be a last-minute lifeline. He's the blueprint, and without him, everything collapses under pressure. I want you to think of a house being built without blueprints. It might stand for a while, but it won't last a storm. A marriage without God's instruction is just like that. It looks fine until life starts shaking it. So let's get practical, because spiritual talk doesn't mean much if it doesn't show up in the way you love your wife. Okay, husbands, here's the truth. Your wife doesn't need you to be perfect. She doesn't need you to have every answer, but she does need to feel safe in your presence. And that safety comes when your presence is rooted in purpose. However, not some self-defined purpose. When you show up with God's wisdom in your heart, your wife feels it. She sees it in how you respond when you're frustrated. She's going to see it when you pray, when you're stressed, how you speak when you're tempted to be silent. Presence isn't just about being in the room. It's about carrying peace into the room, carrying patience, carrying prayer. It's about becoming the thermostat of spiritual calm, even when everything else around you feels chaotic. This is what I've also learned. Being spiritually present means she can feel the peace you've prayed for without you even having to say a word. It's kind of like this. It's like having a thermostat. You're not the thermometer, but you are the thermostat. You just don't react to the emotional temperature. You actually set it. And you set it based on something higher than emotion. You set it based on divine purpose. But what if you've already messed up? What if you feel you haven't been this type of man? That's where this next point can completely shift the direction of your marriage. One of the most humble things a husband can say is, I didn't get this right, but I want to now. Not, you made me act this way. Just be honest. Take ownership and accountability. God does not expect perfection from you as a husband, but he does expect you to follow him. A real spiritual man doesn't justify his failures. He grows from them. He doesn't rewrite the story. He humbles himself and asks for help to write a better next chapter. Some of the strongest marriages you'll ever see didn't start strong. They became powerful because one or both partners said, we cannot fix this without God. Your marriage is not over when you fail. It's over when you are unwilling to change, when you're unwilling to stop learning, and when you stop relying on the one who can restore it. I want you to think of a cracked pot. In God's hands, it becomes stronger when it's sealed with humility. But in your hands alone, it just keeps leaking. Now, finally, this last truth is the one that most people avoid because it reveals what really caused the breakdown in the marriage in the first place. It is true that there are many marriages that end in divorce. Yes, there are many men who pray, but still fall short. But let's be very clear. A failed marriage is not God's fault. It's the result of complete obedience, surface level faith, or selective application of Bible principles. Being a spiritual husband means you will learn God's principles regarding your role as a husband and doing everything you can to apply it in your marriage. In doing so, every single day, consistently, especially when it's difficult and hard. It means actually reading the instruction, actually applying what you read, and not giving up or relying on your own understanding. Because if you're not listening to God, why would he be obligated to bless the outcome of your marriage? Remember, Psalm 65 verse 2 says that God hears prayers, but hearing is reserved for those who listen as well. A spiritual man just doesn't invite God into the marriage. He builds his entire marriage around him. I want you to think about this. God is not some seasoning you sprinkle onto the top of your plans as a family. He's the recipe. Change that, and everything else will change in your marriage. As a husband, your marriage often rises or falls based on your spiritual strength, not because your wife is weak, but because God gave you the role as head. This means that your habits matter, your thoughts matter, your character matters, but you can't lead anyone spiritually if you're running on empty. So how do you start? With consistency, with truth, with daily alignment with God's word. You can't pour into your marriage if you haven't filled yourself with God's direction. It's kind of like a cracked pipe that can't carry clean water. No matter how much you turn on the faucet, you got to fix the source. And when you do that, everything works, but it starts with you. If your marriage is missing peace, purpose, or connection, it's not too late, but you have to start with God, or you'll just keep starting over, because a strong marriage isn't built on feelings. It's built on faith, but not loud faith, not even a perfect faith, but obedience, humility, and doing the best you can. Your wife doesn't need you to quote scriptures. She needs to see scriptures come alive in how you live. She needs to feel the impact of a man who talks to the hearer of prayer and actually listens in return. So, here's your next move. Start praying like your marriage depends on it. Start leading like your legacy depends on it. And start becoming the kind of man you want your daughter to marry and your son to become. Subscribe if this spoke to you. Share this with another husband and comment below what principle hits you the hardest and how are you going to apply it. Your marriage is not beyond repair, but it's beyond autopilot mode. Let's go build something stronger, and let's have our wives thank us because we have chosen to be spiritual men who lead our marriages.